Hello, one and all, and welcome to my top 10 cards of Outlaws of Thunder Junction. You might notice a new little format here. I'm going to be a little bit long on this intro just to explain what's going to go on. You might notice that I'm going to be a little bit faster with my entries than before. That is because it's primarily I'm doing a testing where I'm going to actually put my individual entries of the top 10 as well as on this as a full video, but also as little short entries within the quote-unquote YouTube Shorts as well as TikTok. It's an experimental thing I'm trying out. I'm trying out this format, try to see how to implement shorts and such. So, nevertheless, you still have this video to watch from beginning to end if you want to see my top 10 cards. But if you notice that it's a little bit quicker than usual, it's primarily because of that. But still, nevertheless, you do get this part where we actually, without that, I'm not going to put in the YouTube Shorts or TikTok, my honorary mentions for the set. And the honorary mentions, we're first going to go with the easy ones, the check land cycle that's coming within this set, the fast lands essentially. Very good cards for constructed. We have now the completed cycle for standard at the moment. So this is going to be good for aggro to mid-range deck designs. And it's also nice, I will say, if you decided to play Kaladesh Remastered on Arena, you already have this cycle of lands, so it's kind of nice to have a set on Arena where I don't have to worry about crafting all the rare lands, so that's going to be a little bit of cup of pleasant, I'm not going to lie there. But let's get out of the easy ones. Here's some other honorary mentions. I also have to put Steer Clear here, personally. This one's a little personal for me because I kind of love the art and the flavor text here, mostly because it reminds me of my grandpa who passed away a couple years back and such. I'm not gonna lie, when I saw this card, and this reminds me, with the flavor text, reminds me of something that Grandpa used to say, as well as the art being bull riding, which was one of my grandpa's favorite hobbies to watch and such. I kind of ugly cried when looking at this card, which I can't believe I ugly cried at what most likely is just a decent limited card. But still, it's kind of emotional. It reminded me some pleasant as well as some sad memories, so I gotta put this on the honorary mention because it's kind of one of those rare moments where a magic card can help you bring kind of like a little bit of your experience of life and just essentially allows you to reflect on it, which is kind of cool. Magic can do some cool stuff like that, if I'm going to be frankly honest with you. But I guess the one honorary mention that is not the obvious and that's not the emotional, if more from a mechanical perspective, I think I have to put the honorary mention here is Kellen. Kellen is just a ridiculously good magic card, just free mana to essentially have lifelink and flying, as well as just the ability that whenever you cast either an adventure spell or plot or anything from exile, you essentially could either cheaply cast another lower cost spell or be able to ramp by just putting the land on the battlefield. It's not like as silly as True Lane, but it can do some very silly shenanigans. And that is my honorary mentions. So now let's actually get to the top 10 of Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Shall we? Yeehaw!
Number 10.
Number 10 on my list. This one's pretty simple. It's one that's kind of lucky, and it's one where you have to make your own luck. This one, I have to admit, I kind of overlooked this card initially, and then actually just last minute added it to the list. Simply put, I did not realize that you do get actually all the free cards that you look at when you are casting a spell. So essentially, this is a card draw spell that can also potentially just cheat out for your next turn, a ridiculously big spell. Like, for example, Around the Corner with Modern Horizons Free coming to Arena, Eldrazi. I mean, even in Standard itself, there's a bunch of silly stuff you can cheat out with this. Atali, Atratza. I mean, we all know the general stuff that people cheat out with. And I think Make Your Own Luck is a nice Simic variation to do that, as well as provide some very nifty card draw. Number 9 on this list, and this one is actually with everything you would expect in a Western, and that is some really good boots. And we got some Lava Spur boots. This one's pretty simple. It kind of looks like imitation of Swiftfoot boots and kind of like a not the best imitation. But really, the thing that makes this a lot better than Swiftfoot boots, at least for potentially 60-card formats, is actually the efficiency of the cost here. 1 mana to cast, 1 mana to equip, to get the haste and the ward 1. That's actually very good and actually can help you to cast like creatures off curve to give them a little bit haste and ward, which is very nice. Plus, also, as everybody's already been talking about for older formats, the fact that you can tutor this with Players' Saga is something to at least keep in mind, especially if you want to make a specifically big creature that you decide to cast have haste. So, something to keep in mind. Nevertheless, my number 9th card is Lava Spur Boots. Number 8 on this list. I think if I had to choose, I would personally say all the Spree cards if we're cheating a little bit, because all of them are very powerful modal spells that have very good variety for the early to late to even mid game. So I would say a lot of decks should look at Spree cards within their deck designs to see if it can incorporate into what they're doing for their deck. However, if I have to choose one card from the cycle, if I'm forced to, I have to go with the Final Showdown. Yeah, everybody's gonna make that joke. But nevertheless, it's speed board wipe, very versatile for the mid to the late game. But even then, the early game abilities are actually going to be a little bit sneaky good. Being able to essentially either protect one of your creatures or make all your opponent's creatures lose their abilities. Very relevant. That's going to do some really nifty combat tricks. So, number 8 on the list, it's the Final Showdown. Number 7 on this list, simply put, it's Karovec the Punisher. This is a very dumb Magic card. Look, it's a free mana 2/2, it doesn't look like much, but let's be frank, committing crimes, which for those who don't know, committing a crimes is when you ever target an opponent's anything, is a very, very easy trigger to trigger. And being able to refresh your, essentially any of your mono black spells, or even golden cards that have black within their mana pits from your graveyard, be able to recast them, even with the cost of life, is absolutely absurd. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised how many times this is going to reanimate a Deep Cavern Bats, or even reanimate a Liliana. So, yeah, be prepared to see Karovec quite a bit in the mono black to even some control decks that have black as their primary color. Karovec is just... Number 6 on the list, this one's pretty simple, and that is the Slickshot Show-Off. Pretty simple. This one is kind of the case that it's a Killing Fiend that has flying and haste, as well as you can just plot it and keep it in the exile zone for a period of time until you can ready to go off to attack for a lot of damage with it, as well as hold up a protection spell. It's already been seen play in tempo-based decks, so yeah, this little 2-drop bird is going to be a very popular card, and the prices have already been shown. Also, since people will ask, you might notice why I'm wearing something different compared to what I'm wearing with the other entries. I had to do this actually change last minute to add this to the list, mostly because originally on the list was a bird spell called Hell to Pay, because I thought that was actually a really good card, until I read the card again and realized it's only Treasure Generation with excess damage. Oops. Well, nevertheless, my number 6 card is the Slickshot Show-Off, without a select. Number 5 is kind of the same thing as our previous card, and this is the Goldvein Hydra. Just an Et spell that makes a scalable, really big Hydra that has all those keyword abilities. That then you get an insurance policy that when it dies, you generate tapped treasure tokens. I mean, it's the same thing as I said before. It's essentially, potentially, a ramp spell, so if your opponent decides to remove it, well, guess what? You're going to get Ed's treasures, and then, yet again, you're going to ramp into either your really big stompy creatures like Vitali, Adraxa, etc., etc. But even non-green Stompy will really appreciate this card just for the simple fact that you can, ramp into and potentially make some very big things, including another Goldvein Hydra. And that's why Goldvein Hydra is my number 5 card on the list. It's just a very, very big Hydra with an admirable insurance policy. Number 4 on my list, and this has to be Breaches. Now, you could probably cheat here and say both Breaches and Malcolm, primarily because I think they're both going to be very good upgrades to the Pirate deck, as well as the new Double Down enchantment. But primarily I want to focus on Breaches here, because the thing that the deck kind of lacks is being able to close the game sometimes. And the fact that you get to the ability that when you cast 2 spells, you have either a burn spell or a copy of the spell when you sacrifice an artifact. Very powerful ability. Also, you're playing Pirates, which has a lot of artifact synergy / generation within their overall deck design, so it's going to be very easy to sacrifice like an artifact token, like a map or something. So, number 4 on this list, it's got to be the Goblin Pirate, Breaches. Number 3 on this list, and this one I'm going to cheat a little bit and actually talk about the whole join-up cycle that we're seeing. That's essentially a legendary enchantment cycle within the set. We have some characters like Annie, Rakdos, Vraska, as well as Tiny Bones, and as well as Kellen joins the team enchantments. All of them are relatively very powerful enchantments, especially if you're doing legendary-based shenanigans. However, if I'm forced to choose one, even though all of them I think are really good, I would say I would probably focus on Tiny Bones joins up. It's actually, I think, a very powerful card, especially if you're doing crime-based shenanigans, because this is one of the easiest ways to trigger crimes due to the ETB with legendary abilities, as well as just itself being able to discard a card from your opponent's hand, or your hand, potentially, if you're doing reanimated shenanigans. So, number 3 on the list, Tiny Bones joins up, but the whole joins up cycle in general. Number 2 on this list, and I think it's kind of fitting I put this on the number 2 spot, and it's got to be our 2-mana Planeswalker from the set, even though you can only cast it on turn 4, Jace Reawaken. Yes, that static effect looks like a cost, but if I'm being honest with you, it's not. Primarily, you probably don't want to play this on the early game. If I'm being legit honest with you, you do want to just play this card really by turn 4 or 5, essentially. You can find ways to cheap it out early, but I think just playing it on that spot is actually perfect, because then you can just play Jace as well as play something to protect Jace, which is very powerful, as well as just Jace itself is a very powerful card. Being able to loot and plot any card is very good, as well as just if you can get to that ultimate, if you're plotting a bunch of cards, it could lead to some very silly copy storm shenanigans. So, keep your eye on Jace. Jace is a very silly Magic the Gathering card.
Number 1.
My number 1 card, and my personal favorite, from the whole Outlaws of Thunder Junctions, I'll be honest with you, it's Obeka Splitter of Seconds. Now granted, yes, this is a ridiculously absurd, pretty much Commander card. Everybody's talking about the absurd shenanigans you can do with this in Commander, since there are so many powerful upkeep triggers. We could be here for an hour talking about it. But I also want to say, don't underrate this for Standard as well, even potentially Alchemy, because there is actually a lot of powerful upkeep triggers in those formats as well as ways to give Obeka haste, that I think this card is going to be a sneaky good card within 60-card formats. Yes, the stats don't look amazing, but you can buff her, and yes, there are ways to give her haste, and there are really powerful upkeep abilities that you have to keep an eye on. So, my number 1 card, honestly, it has to be Obeka, without doubt. And that is my top 10 cards from Outlaws of Thunder Junctions. What is your personal favorites, out of curiosity? If you want to say it, you can write it down in the comments below. If you can, please like this video, as well as if you want to support my future content with deck text, as well as my future top 10s. You can support me on Ko-Fi, as well as my Patreon. Links will be down below. Nevertheless, I hope you all have a good yeehaw time with this set, and you all have a lovely day. As they say, hip hip hooray! Bada beep, bada. Try to say Slickshot show off 10 times fast. It's kind of tricky.
Slickshot show off, 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 Slickshot show. Yeah, it's hard. I had to think for.